Today we're going to be discussing the differences between the build versus buy mentality on Sunday GUNDAY. What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. Today we're taking a further look at the difference between guns that are built versus those that you buy. Now, I couldn't really come up with a good name for this one, so I guess we will just name it after the slide. Let's take a further look at the Razorback 17. Starting from the very top down, I'm running a Trijicon RMR RM06 with the 3.25 MOA dot. Surprise there? Probably not. That is sitting on top of the beautifully cut up Lantac Razorback slide, which comes standard with some Trijicon HD night sights. The slide has 5 windows total, serrations and pockets cut out everywhere your eyes land on it, and it's definitely splitting the line of Ultra Function and Ultra Gucci. Inside of that, you will find Lantac's Glock 9 match fit barrel, which has some awesome machining to some very tight tolerances, just like much of what they offer. Under that is their flared head guide rod, and I should also mention that every other little part within the slide, like the ultra smooth safety plunger, the upgraded firing pin, and springs, are all hand fit to give you the best performance possible. Moving down to the bottom, I've built this thing on a full-size polymer 80 frame, and not to toot my own horn, but after building so many of these, this is definitely one of the nicest ones that I've completed to date. Now, this frame uses regular Gen 3 parts, so the mag release is stock, but I did decide to go with an extended slide stop lever to help make braking a little bit easier. As for the trigger, this is the Lantac ECTG9 drop-in trigger with a flat face shoe, 3.5 pound connector, and it's even held in place with their titanium frame pins. It's all about the little details on this one. Then to top it all off, I threw one of the new Olight PL Pros on the front to get some testing in with that while we shoot this thing. So depending on who you ask, some might say that there's a lot going on here. Others might think it is pretty subdued compared to other builds out there. Regardless, I'm really happy with the way the build came out so far, but I won't be happy unless it runs. Now for this one, I got a little bit ahead of myself. I actually brought this thing out to the range when I was filming a previous video, and I had it along with me in the van, so I figured, well, I might as well shoot this thing. P80s can be sort of finicky from time to time, so let me just put a mag or two through it to see if it actually runs. Let's check out some of that footage right now. All right, some first shots through this new build. I have not fired a single round through it yet, and it's already feeling pretty smooth, probably one of the smoothest polymer 80s that I've ever put together. Just dry firing the trigger, feels like it needs a little bit to work in. Looks like the slide is going back into battery every time, so I'm loading this up with 115 grains, and we'll see how it does. First mag was a success. Let's run one more just to be safe. All right. So as you guys saw, this thing ran okay right from the start. I was actually pretty surprised with that because these things can be really finicky from time to time. When I put this thing together, I was doing the test where you hold the slide back and then you kind of let it go in an upward position. If that can go all the way back into battery, then you should be okay. So right now I have 2 mags through this thing. I have since put this RMR on top, so this is now like complete now. And let's run another 30 round mag just to make sure that this thing is really gonna run the entire time we're out here. Now let's see how this thing is with a dot on it. Hopefully it's zeroed. let's go talk about this thing. Alright guys, back for a first mag impression with this Lantac Razorback slide and basically an entire Lantac build. I'll start from the top down. A lot of people ask me why I have so many RMRs and why I run them so much. Basically, it's because they're bomb-proof. They are relatively inexpensive right now that the SRO has come out. There have been deals for these all over the internet, so I snatched up a bunch of them, and you will see them on some future builds coming down the line. It's a great optic. I have them in all different MOAs, this one being the 3.25, and this is good for kind of like in between. You're not going to have a super tiny 1 MOA dot, but you're not going to have that big, bright 6.5, I believe is the other one. One downside to this is that it kind of renders the Trijicon HD night sights that are included in this slide pretty much useless. If I push out and get a sight picture, I can just barely see the front sight post over the back of the RMR here. If you're used to shooting with an RMR or any kind of optic for that matter like I am, you should be able to use those pretty effectively, but if you want something that is going to have a true co-witness, then you're probably going to want to switch those out. I'm leaving it how it is right now and I'm happy with it. Now moving down to the barrel, slide, all the little internal parts, guide rod, just this entire setup and combo here coming from Lantac. There's definitely a lot going on. This is a very busy slide. Like I mentioned, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different window cutouts on this slide. When this thing is closed, you can actually see right down in there to the guide rod and spring assembly. Some people won't like that. They're gonna be like, oh, you're gonna get dirt and sticks and things like that in there. Now, could that cause a malfunction? Yeah, probably, but I don't plan on throwing this thing in the dirt and getting it all muddy. A pistol like this would most likely live its life out on the range, shooting for fun and things like that. You could probably carry something like this for self-defense if that's what you're into. We can talk more about that a bit later, but I do like the way that this slide came out. I'm not too worried about the reliability with those windows on there because what that gives you in turn is a super light slide that tracks really, really fast. When I shot those 2 first mags a while back, what I was actually doing was pressing off a round, and then I was used to more recoil because I'm used to shooting my regular stock Glock 17. So I was sort of anticipating that recoil impulse, and then I was pushing the front sight post down because this thing does not have a recoil impulse like a stock Glock. The grip angle feels a little bit better. It points way more naturally because of that more 1911 style grip angle on there, and this thing tracks nice and smooth and flat at the same time. So after those 2 mags and then putting the RMR on top of it, I sort of had a better feel for the gun. So as I was shooting right now, everything feels nice and tight. As far as the slide operation and lockup and everything, for a Polymer 80 build, this is a really smooth gun coming right from the workbench, I'll say. It should really only get better in time, and one thing that definitely needs a little more time behind it is this trigger. I typically don't talk about triggers after the first mag or the first 3 mags, but this thing definitely needs a little bit more work. I'll try to put a couple more extra mags through this thing, and then hopefully it will smooth out by the end of this video. As far as everything else goes, the controls on here are pretty standard. I'm using a Glock extended slide stop lever. The mag button is the same for a Gen 3. The serrations on this slide are pretty damn aggressive, but it's not aggressive to the point that it's like ripping your skin off. With the 3 bigger window cuts, the 2 on the side and the 1 on the top here, that actually allows your hand to kind of like squish in there, and you really don't need that many serrations on here. But because it is so cut up and grippy, I can grab this thing from anywhere on the slide and get a positive purchase on it. Even all the way up in the front here towards the crown of the barrel, you can see that they have what some people call a cobra cut, where they're actually removing material from the front there. So I thought that was a pretty unique touch, and I actually don't have another gun that is cut up like this. As far as accuracy out of this barrel, I'm not going to be testing anything like that today. I do want this gun to break in a lot more before I would do a test like that. But if I had to guess, if I'm shooting just regular ball ammo like this, I'm not going to see that much of a great improvement between this and a stock Glock 17 barrel. However, once you get up into that higher quality ammunition, with this barrel, slide, trigger, just this overall combo, you're going to see a way better difference if you're actually using quality ammo. So that's enough of me blabbing for now. Let me go out to the range and put some more rounds down before it gets too damn hot out here. It's still the middle of summer. And then I will come back for some final thoughts on the difference between going out and buying a gun similar to this or just building one yourself. obviously haven't zeroed this RMR on paper yet, but let's see what we can do back here with a little bit of distance. Looks like I'm high left. Looks like it could come a bit more. A little bit. This is not the best way to zero an RMR, just for the record. I think I'll take that. Now let's check out that super rough long distance zero on this dueling tree right here. Not bad once I got used to the holdover at this distance. Talk about holding yourself accountable. I think I hit the 2x4 there. Now this thing is already shooting pretty flat, so I should be able to keep accuracy somewhat decent with a mag dump. That was quick. And just enough time for a bonus mag. Oh man. Alright guys, back for some of my final thoughts on this Lantac Razorback build. Overall, I have to say that I am pretty happy with this build because this is the first Polymer 80 build that I put together that has run 100% right from the time that I finished it. The slide, action, and lockup and everything feels really solid. It feels like a normal Glock and actually even better than some Glocks. And the only thing that really still needs to work in is this trigger. I'll bring you guys in a little bit for a close-up of this. I'm definitely a fan of this trigger shoe. It's nice and flat. It has a big safety blade in the middle so you know when that is out of the way. But since this thing is brand new and I just put it together, the take-up, it's a little gritty. Could probably be polished up a little bit. Once I find that first wall, there is sort of like a second here with the grit right back there. Now I know that I'm sitting on top of the wall for a pretty light break. Let's check the reset. A little bit gritty. A little bit of take up again, and then that wall. So this trigger is not something that I am super stoked on right from the start, but that should definitely improve over time. A lot of builds, Polymer 80 specifically, when you put them together, the triggers need a little bit of time to kind of break in and get smoothed out. Once you get rid of all of that grit though, and I'm sitting on top of that wall, the break does feel really nice. It almost feels lighter than that 3.5 pound connector that is in here. However, I think it's definitely workable and I think it will get better in the future. Now let's talk a little bit about the price and what this video is actually about, the build versus buy mentality. As for right now, when we are talking about the price, I'm not going to include a weapon light or an optic on here, but I will include everything else, the frame, trigger, all of the internal parts, barrel, sights, and things like that. If you want access to a complete build list to this gun, I will make that available over on Patreon, so shout out to everyone who supports me over there. But as a rough estimate, there is about $1,500 worth of parts into this build. A large chunk of that portion is the slide and barrel because those things obviously cost more than pretty much everything else. Now, comparing this directly to a completely stock Glock 17, you are obviously getting a lot more functionality out of a gun like this. Now, a lot of the functionality is really not for everyone. Like I mentioned in a lot of other videos, if you're just a recreational shooter and you're only going out every once in a while, going to the range maybe once a month and you're putting like 100 rounds down, if you're not actually training and trying to get more proficient with a firearm on a bunch of different platforms, then chances are you're not going to notice the benefits of things like a different grip angle and the texture on here. You probably would notice the slide cuts and serrations on here because they're obviously super effective if you are into press checking and manipulating a slide from the front like that. It's definitely noticeable. And there's actually so much material that has been taken off of this slide that I'm pretty sure if you shot a stock Glock right next to this, you would notice a night and day difference. But then back to other things like the sights and an optic and a nice improved trigger. None of these things are going to make you a better shooter, and you're really not going to notice any of the benefits from all of these added functionalities and the kind of nice tuned up pieces unless you're actually out there shooting and training a lot. So now, build versus buy. If I were to buy and then modify a Glock to be something like this, what would I have to do? Well, for one, the only thing that would even come close to this would be a Glock 17 MOS, which I'm a big fan of. I love that gun. With that, you will get some front serrations on the sides of the slide, and you will be able to mount up an optic without actually sending it out to be milled. But at the same time, you're not going to get those window cuts, which saves a lot of weight and makes this thing track super smooth and flat. You're not going to get the upgraded night sights, which right there on top is probably another like $100 worth of value if that's something that you're looking for. So start to keep in mind some of these things. About $100 for the sights. I would say at least $350 to get a slide package that is somewhat similar to this with a stock Glock slide. And then you're going to add in things like the barrel and all of the internals, how everything is polished, like the safety plunger. There's upgraded springs, the recoil guide rod in the front with the flared head, the nice fluting on the barrel, and it's match grade, so chances are you're going to get better accuracy out of it. For the upper portion of this pistol, not including the frame or anything down from that, I would say to get a stock Glock on relatively the same level as a gun like this, you would be putting probably like $800 to $900 on top of your already functioning and working gun. And now moving down to the frame, this is where things aren't quite as expensive, but if you're going to get an upgraded trigger, you could do this. I'm not sure why you would want to, but you could put some titanium pins in there. You could make things a little bit tighter and a little bit, well, more polished and well-rounded. If you're running a stock Glock frame, you're not going to have this nice grip angle and the texturing on here, so you would have to send that out for some stippling and kind of reprofiling. So now I'm going to get real broad with the prices here, but just say you're into a Glock 17 MOS running about $600. You send out the frame to get cut, that'll be another $300 on top of that, and then we'll just say another $300 for a barrel, guide rod, springs, and everything else as far as the internals for the upper go. And then you're looking at least another $150 to $200 for a trigger. If you want to get your frame reprofiled and stippled and everything like that, you're probably looking at another $200 to $250 there. Again, these prices are very broad, and if you don't want it to be exactly like this, you can switch things up a little bit. Instead of texturing and reprofiling, you could just live with a stock Glock frame. You could throw some Talon grips on there. You could run a stock Gen 5 trigger. I personally think it's not that bad. You don't need the fancy pins and the serrations and everything like that, but if you are trying to build something that has similar functionality and shootability, if you're trying to build something like this out of a stock Glock, chances are you are going to spend a lot more money modifying an already functioning gun rather than just going out and building something like this right from the start. So you guys know how the gun community is. Everyone is super opinionated, and I'm sure a lot of people have some things to say about this. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. When you're on the market shopping for a new pistol and you want something to be done in a very particular way, are you going to go out and buy a used gun and then modify it to be something like this? Or are you just going to go all out and build it all from the ground up by yourself? This would actually be a pretty good topic for a live stream, so let's set a goal for this video. So let's say we get to 1,500 likes on this video, and then I will come on and schedule a live stream. That way we can talk about it pretty much face to face about my detailed thoughts on this. Having a conversation about this is much easier when it is a two-way street, so I can answer some of your questions real time. We can go a little bit more into detail on my thought behind the build versus buy mentality, and then also carrying a gun like this. A lot of people have asked me my thoughts on carrying modified guns for self-defense, so once we get to that goal, we'll have a live stream and we'll talk about it face to face. So that's all that I got for today's video. If you guys like what you saw here with this build, I do have a lot of discount codes for everything that I put into this build. You can check out those codes either down below in the description or over on my website, talonside.com. If you're ever looking for discount codes on pretty much anything that I show here on my channel, chances are you can find something over there on my website. So that's about it for now. I will hopefully keep shooting this gun and have some more rounds through it for that live stream whenever that may happen. And that's all that I got. So if you are new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every week. That's going to be all for today. So as always, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you in the next one.